Dragon's Crown, a game that was very controversial at the time of its original release for all the wrong reasons. When you boot up Dragon's Crown for the first time, its striking imagery and distinct art style catch your eye right away. This game looks unlike anything else on the market. That was true in 2013, and for the most part, it is still true today. I remember the media outcry about this game when it came out. A rather infamous article by Jason Schreier made the rounds and brought a lot of mostly negative attention to this game. As Schreier pointed out in his opinion piece, Dragon's Crown features the Sorceress, one character from the game. As you can see, the Sorceress was designed by a 14-year-old boy. Perhaps game development studios should stop hiring teenagers. The game's director and president of Vanillaware, the studio behind Dragon's Crown, George Kamitani, responded shortly after by making a rather homophobic post on Facebook. That post contained an image showing three very muscular, very naked men closely huddled together. It furthermore stated that Schreier may be more pleased with this kind of art. It was a whole mess. Later, Kamitani apologized and Schreier wrote a more comprehensive article, talking about sexism in the video game industry as a whole and problematic imagery and beauty standards portrayed through games like Dragon's Crown. Even though those two squabblers kind of came to an agreement, I feel like their discourse overshadowed the entire game coverage at the time. Everywhere you looked, if someone brought up Dragon's Crown, it was always about its art style and how immaculate or utter garbage it was. In hindsight, I feel like this is such a pity because this game is actually super interesting gameplay-wise, but everyone just kept talking about its unhinged character designs. And don't get me wrong, a review of this game should absolutely talk about its art style, it being such a prominent aspect of Dragon's Crown. So let's get this out of the way quickly. Yes, the art in this game is quite unique. It features over-sexualized character designs in such an exaggerated way, there really is no game out there looking even remotely like this. The designs can be really out there. The image which springs to mind for most people is probably the design of the Sorceress character. This is also the one that inspired Mr. Schreier to write his original article. It features quite the voluptuous woman who loves looking at the player seductively while holding a staff between her butt cheeks. And she's not the only one designed in that way. There's a mermaid whose tail begins just slightly below her buttocks. Honestly, when I first saw that design, it had me burst out laughing. The male designs are just as over the top. There are characters who have layers and layers of muscle stacked on top of each other. There's a character who's basically just a big lump of muscled flesh with a teeny weeny head on top. It's hilarious. Not every character looks like that. In fact, there are some designs that are simply beautiful, but rather tame regarding their masculine or feminine features. The princess, the elf girl, or the wizard all have very gorgeous, very distinct styles, but compared to their over-sexualized companions, they almost feel out of place. According to Kamitani himself, his intention was to take traditional character tropes from works like The Lord of the Rings and put his own spin on them by deliberately exaggerating certain physical properties in an almost cartoonish manner. No matter how you feel about the designs that Kamitani came up with, you have to agree that he was successful in this respect. I personally love the art style. I have a thing for games that use traditional art from various periods as inspiration. Special shout out to Joe Richardson and his masterpieces Four Last Things and The Procession to Calvary. Dragon's Crown style reminds me of Renaissance art, but instead of Catholic motifs like the crucifixion of Jesus or the Madonna and Child, you get dark elf girls in skimpy armor and dwarves with boulders for arms. For some reason, even though it shouldn't, it kinda works, and I absolutely dig it. It is unhinged, it is comically over the top, and it's horny as hell. In the context of this game though, it works really well. I totally understand if people are repelled by this. I only wished that the entire conversation about Dragon's Crown hadn't been about the character designs alone. So, let's talk about why this game really rules gameplay-wise. Dragon's Crown is a 2.5D side-scrolling beat-em-up game with a strong focus on leveling, looting, and replayability. You can choose one of 6 characters, all offering a unique playstyle either focused on melee or ranged combat. Each character has a multitude of actions you can perform to deal with your opponents. Let's take the Fighter for example, a melee-focused class which is a good starting character for people who play Dragon's Crown for the first time. The Fighter uses a one-handed weapon to attack. You can smash the square button on your controller and pummel enemies to death like that. You can also perform an upward attack, launching enemies into the air. Having done that, you can smash square again repeatedly to attack mid-air. When you're done, you can perform a downward slam, which creates an AoE attack that pushes enemies away. If you feel overwhelmed by a large group, just hold the circle button and release a mighty power smash to deal some serious damage. Or if you feel the need to defend yourself, you can slide into enemies, dash away, or simply block. As you can see, the game offers a lot of ways to engage with the combat. And this is just the basic moveset. As you progress through the game, you can unlock additional effects for your moves. For instance, you can upgrade the slide attack to knock enemies down or add a whirlwind effect to your basic attack. You can turn blocking into a shield bash that allows you to parry enemy attacks. Or, if you're a simpleton like me, just upgrade the shockwave effect for your downward attack and power smash and watch hordes of enemies fly through the room. Keep in mind that I'm only scraping the surface of what you can do with a single character. There are 6 classes in total, and even though I only tried out a couple of them, I can already tell that they are just as versatile and adaptable as the Fighter. It's crazy what you can do with the characters in this game and the variety of builds you can try out. What's even more crazy to me is how Dragon's Crown manages to keep things fresh, even 10 or 15 hours into the main game. The game starts off fairly simple. You pick a class, learn the basic moveset, and then you're thrown into the first level. You fight some enemies using your moves, environmental traps or items like crossbows that you can find in chests or loot from enemy corpses. At the end of the level, you fight a boss that requires you to pay attention to its moves and react accordingly. Once you defeat the boss, you get a score, a corresponding rank, some loot, and move on to the town area to resupply, repair your gear, and progress the story. For a while, that is the basic game loop. Prepare for battle in town, maybe pick up a side quest, go into a level, fight enemies, find loot, kill the boss. Dragon's Crown only offers 9 stages in total and a final boss level, but the game pushes you to revisit each level multiple times. Now, you may think that this sounds rather monotonous or even boring. There are only 9 levels after all, and the basic progression in the game doesn't really change all that much. But Dragon's Crown always thinks of new ways to motivate players to keep playing. Side quests require you to interact with certain level elements in new and interesting ways. Sometimes, by progressing a side quest, you uncover hidden areas or new enemies. Or they challenge you in new ways, for instance taking on a boss solo or defeating that boss within a specific time limit. There are the occasional fetch and kill quests as well, but I always felt like I could just complete them along the way while doing something else. What annoyed me though was the fact that I could only take on 5 side quests at a time. I wish the game would have let me accept all available quests and then do a full run through all the areas, completing everything in one go, but alas, you do have to return to the guild every once in a while to turn in quests and accept new ones. Also, I feel like the game is balanced around solving these quests which kind of makes them mandatory if you don't want to end up completely underleveled at the end of the game. Okay, so optional or semi-optional quests keep things interesting, but what else? Well, once you're done with all 9 stages, you get a B route for each stage. To progress the story, you have to find 9 talismans, which are protected by 9 new bosses. So, each level gets another area with fresh enemies, locations and bosses. Neat! At the end of each stage, you now also get the chance to keep on adventuring to another stage instead of returning home, which will raise your reward quite substantially. So, once you collected all of the talismans, you fight the final boss and that's it. Game's over, right? Hardly. It has only just begun. After finishing the game on normal difficulty, you can go on by switching to hard mode, which raises the level cap, unlocks new quests and introduces a new system, the Labyrinth of Chaos, which is a random dungeon generator. So, maybe you see why I never got bored with this game, even though it is quite limited in scope. Having 9 stages doesn't sound like much, but Dragon's Crown always throws something new into the mix to make me want to go again. It also helps that completing a level can be done in about 10 minutes or even less if you're better than me, so you can decide for yourself if you just want to play a quick round or take on multiple stages in a row and get a fat bonus at the end. That's another thing I really like about Dragon's Crown, the way it handles your score, ranking and experience points. The score you get at the end basically directly translates into your experience points. You can raise the score in various ways. There's a skill you can upgrade that turns coins that are found in the level or dropped by enemies into score points. There are certain bonuses you get for completing challenges in a stage. For instance, you get a huge bonus for completing a stage without taking any damage. I love this system. The game really incentivizes you to play well, but it doesn't punish you if you're not super skilled. If you die in a fight, you can go again until you're out of lives. And even if you do, you can pay some gold to go again. And in the end, you are still rewarded and get that feeling of achievement. But let me tell you, nothing feels better than finishing a boss with no damage taken, getting that sweet fat bonus at the end, and then leveling up like 5 times at once. I didn't manage to pull that off too often, but as I said, it doesn't matter too much. You still get a reward in the end, just a smaller one. I think this approach is really cool. If you're looking for that extra challenge, you can go into a stage all alone, fight your way to the end, try to take no damage and get a nice reward. Maybe that isn't enough of a challenge for you. If you want to spice things up even more, you can decide to skip side quests that have already been completed with another character. This way, the game grants you the same amount of skill points you would get for completing the quest normally, but you get no experience points at all. So you'll be pretty underleveled, but you can still unlock some skills for your character. So hey, why not try to complete a run without any experience from side quests, relying only on skill points? Sounds like a cool challenge to me. If you're looking for a more casual experience, well, you can summon NPCs or play co-op with a friend and take on these bosses together. There's even crossplay between PS3, PS5 and the PS Vita. Yes, you heard that right, the PS Vita. Is there any game out there that does that? In any case, what I'm trying to say is that for all players of all skill levels, this game has something to offer. You can tweak the level of difficulty in various ways in order to create that perfect challenge and balance for you. And Dragon's Crown achieves all that quite elegantly without the use of traditional difficulty settings. There are 3 levels of difficulty, normal, hard and infernal, but they are more like game modes. So hard would be like New Game Plus and infernal New Game Plus Plus. But they don't really determine how hard the game is. You do. And that's really cool. So, as good as the gameplay is, and I do have little to complain here, the story and overall writing aren't particularly original or interesting. Sadly, this aspect doesn't seem to have been a huge focus for the developer of Dragon's Crown. The game presents a fairly traditional fantasy plot. There's a kingdom whose future is at stake as its king disappeared, and a neighboring country is planning to use that weakness for its own merit. There's a bit of a political plot here, with forces who try to take control from the shadows and two opposing political parties, but it all stays very superficial and doesn't go all too deep. In the end, it all comes down to hunting down powerful artifacts of old and defeating a menacing evil whose purpose is the destruction of mankind. Princesses, knights, dragons and fairies, it's all here and you've probably seen it a million times already. There is a little bit of writing that I found intriguing though. For every quest you complete, you unlock one of these beautiful artworks and a corresponding text which offers some lore for the world. Most of it is fairly light-hearted or straight up funny, but every now and again there's a neat little story here. It even gives some of the characters in the game, like Morgan, the magic shop owner, or Samuel, leader of the Adventurers Guild, some interesting backstory. So that's cool, but yeah, story-wise, I wouldn't expect anything too out of the ordinary. Other than that, I really don't have much to complain. I have to admit that there were sections in the game where there was a bit too much going on screen, and I lost track of where my character was or what was going on. If you play with NPC summons or other players, I feel like this can become a major issue. I started playing this on my Vita, and the screen was just a little too small for me to keep track of everything. Doing a full playthrough solo and playing on a bigger screen really helped. But still, some sections were somewhat chaotic. By the way, this game runs like a charm on the Steam Deck. I played the PS3 version emulated and had no issues whatsoever. If you've made it this far into the video, I hope I could convince you to pick up this awesome game if you haven't already. The Pro version is still available for PS4 on the PSN, and it's regularly on sale for like $5. It's a stunningly beautiful game with some of the best music I've heard in a while, composed by the GOAT Hitoshi Sakamoto. It has a super addictive game loop, weighty and complex combat, and replay value through the roof. Honestly, I can't wait to pick another character and go again all the way from the beginning, even though I sank like 20 hours into the game already. It is that fun. So, even if it's a fairly traditional fantasy tale, I think it's a tale worth being told. Thank you.